from being able to create anything that we want in our lives. And since I started working with Clay and Mike, actually, I had the most successful year. I made more money this year than I did in the last 2 combined. So like I reinvested 50 grand just back into training and into everything like that. To be able to just drop $50,000 and just be like, I need to reinvest this back into training, mindset, travel, whatever it was, is pretty amazing. And I do think a huge part of it was working from Clay. So I'm going to bring him out right now, get him on here. If you guys could kind of leave your questions to the end, I'm going to kind of let him run this how he wants to run it. Get into it and get excited. And you guys, I want you guys to hear his story first too. Colin, when you see him, come on. How many people are on here? There's a few. 47, 48. It's climbing. Yeah, it was a little bit late. I want you guys to hear his story first. So let me see if I can see him here. Because for me, I love hearing where people came from. That is huge for me. Oh, there he is. Hey, Clay. I can't see you.
Dude?
I can't see you.
Yeah, just like send that video. There you go.
Can I see you? Hold on.
Maybe.
I can see him.
Oh, there you are. Oh, hi.
How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Where are you? Why is it so dark? Are you in the deep south?
No, no, man. I'm in Denver in Colorado. It's like thunderstorms and all cool stuff going on outside.
Oh, cool. Hey, so I was just kind of talking about, you know, what you've helped me with and when we started working together and stuff. So I'm going to give you the floor. If you could, I would love if I told everybody what you're going to be what we kind of talked about you talking about, but do you think you could share kind of like your story and like why you started doing what you do? Because I think that's a huge part of of you. That's amazing. And then, yeah, if you want to do a Q&A afterwards or anything, but floor is yours.
Dude, we can do whatever you want. No problem. So for those that don't know me, my name's Clay, or Clay Moffat, whatever. Ed, if you know me from a while back, because I got sick of introducing myself as Clay and then getting asked if my name was Clyde, Cliff, Clive, Chris, Craig, and every other thing in the sun. So I just started calling myself Ed. And then I just shifted back to Clay because I had Ed in one place, Clay in another, and people just got confused. So how I got started. Well, first things first, it kind of goes back to a long time ago. I was a juvenile delinquent, caused a lot of trouble, got in a lot of trouble, continued making more trouble, almost flunked high school. And in my second last year, I basically did flunk and kind of like had a epiphany that if I didn't get straight A's, I was pretty much wasn't going to graduate. So I turned around and did that. But all throughout school, I had this resistance to authority per se. And that's not exactly true, but that's what most people would have said it was. It was more that I had a resistance to a perceived authority, meaning that someone was a teacher, so that automatically meant that I had to respect them. And that was kind of like a common trend that followed me through school. So me being me, and my parents being my parents, who have always supported me in the best way possible, got together and decided I wanted to travel and I wanted to get paid. So I joined the military and became a weapons specialist in the Australian Navy, and was in the Navy for 7.5 years. And again, like this constant trouble. So I remember when I was in year 6, so what's that, 11 years old, I was in detention for 132 days. And that's not, I promise you, I'm not saying that to brag. It's just to give you an idea of like how messed up I was. And I really lacked, I guess you could say, discipline, but it comes down to exactly where we're going tonight and why it's so important to understand what self-sabotage is and why it's something that isn't your fault, but it's your responsibility to change. And we'll get more into that in a moment. So I continued working through a lot of things. I continued pushing forward with a lot of things. And in the military, I continued like butting heads. You'd think, right, military, macho men, strong people, all this kind of thing. Well, the whole lack of respect for the authority that I had caused a lot more problems in the military. And I still made rank pretty quickly, and I still got ahead, even though I was causing trouble. But it was just this fight against the world, basically, is the way I would say I looked at it. A lot of that came from my own personal insecurities, although most people would never have said that. I was pretty cocky, I was pretty arrogant, I was a lot stronger back then. I used to work out a lot more. Now it's a bit less because I'm more into the business side of things. And I had I guess you could call it like a false bravado. Or you just call it like a cocky son of a bitch, really. And it wasn't exactly ideal, but I didn't recognize that. It wasn't, I was lost in my own ego, right? I was like 21, 22. And I just carried on going ahead. So I went to Iraq and Afghanistan, came back, and I walked off the ship, and I never set foot on a Navy base again. Like, that was it, I was done. I didn't want anything to do with it, and I left it behind. And I migrated across into the oil and gas. Now, some of you are from Canada, so like you know about the energy sector pretty well. It's pretty well paid. And if you work offshore in oil and gas, it's basically like just like being in the Navy with about 3 times the time off and 3 times the pay. So for me, it was like, oh my God, it's like the best thing in the world. And so I was like, this is fantastic. Life's going to be great. And I went ahead and moved forward into that. And kind of continued pushing ahead. Now, I skipped over a couple of things, which I'm going to touch on briefly. The self-control part comes into a lot of it when it comes to self-sabotage. And on my first Christmas leave when I was in the military, I flew back to Perth. So I'm from Perth in Western Australia. And I flew back to Perth for the Christmas leave, which is like 4 weeks, I think. And I landed on about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. And then a good buddy of mine from school was his work Christmas party that evening. And so he's like invited me, come pick me up. We went down to the party. And then I woke up 7.5 days later in hospital. I'd been in a fight. I don't remember it. I got thrown through a balcony railing. When I say through, I mean through, not over. Like they smashed the balcony railing. I smashed my hip open. And I fell about 10.5 feet headfirst on the concrete, fractured my skull, and had to learn to walk and talk again in 2.5 weeks. In 2007, just when I got out of the Navy, I got busted for doing stupid shit while drinking. And a lot of things, like basically alcohol is a kryptonite for me. I don't drink. And I haven't drank for a few years, and I'm not going to drink ever again. Purely because of this whole self-sabotage thing. I've got to the point now where I've cleaned out a lot of my own demons, and that's really what got me started on this path. I continued working in the oil and gas field, and I had this huge opportunity for a massive promotion. And I let something trivial fire me up, get me angry, which was something pathetic, and ended up costing me a promotion, which was about an extra 100 grand a year in wages and then other benefits and things like that. So at the ripe young age of 26, I kind of took a cup of harden the F up, and I recognized that the rest of the world's not the problem. Like I actually remember standing in front of the mirror one day and just looking and saying, well, what's the problem here? And had this glaring realization that the problem was staring straight back at me. And I'd spent the last 26 years, well, let's just call it 20, right? Because I don't think I was really self-sabotaging from like 5 years old or 2 years old. Could have been. But I had this realization that all this blame that I put on the rest of the world, everything was false. It was disenfranchising, and it basically just made me even angrier. The whole time, it just made me angrier. because everything was out of my control. Now, I'm not necessarily a control freak. I kind of quite happily let go. And even with that, there was no direction on my life. I basically was like a bulldozer. And if you could imagine, like just setting a bulldozer to go, filling up the tank, and then locking in gear and just letting it go. So there's no path, there's no direction. It's just going straight. And it could go off a cliff, it could go down into a river, it could fall into a ditch. Like it could go do a multitude of different things. And that's basically what I was doing. I was just pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward. And I derailed myself because of these underlying patterns that I picked up. So it got to about 26, and I've been passed over for promotion and then passed over for another one. And I was like, I've had enough of this. Like, I've really had enough of this. This not on, I'm not doing it anymore. And so what I did is I started reading books on persuasion, right? I figured, well, I'll just, and this is going to sound dodgy, but whatever, right? I'm going to manipulate people to get them to do what I want. And I don't mean like, you know, get them to do things that they don't actually want to do. Like, I'm going to learn how to communicate, because whatever I was doing wasn't working. And I really sucked at communicating with people. And so I started reading books on persuasion. And a couple of the books that I read started mentioning things about NLP. So then I started reading NLP. And then a lot of the NLP books I read started mentioning stuff about hypnosis. I started reading in hypnosis books. And then some hypnosis books started leading into psychology. So I started reading psychology books. And I started reading through books, but really, if we're being completely honest, like it was just like half-assed, right? It wasn't any major attempt. There wasn't any major thing. Now it's just like reading. I was like, okay, I was testing things here and now. I was dabbling in this and dabbling in that. But I started noticing some changes. Even with the half-assed attempt that I was doing, I started noticing some changes. So I continued. And then in 2014, they had the oil price war with Saudi Arabia, OPEC, and the US. And I was working offshore at the time, and seeing as the oil price dropped from $120 a barrel to $30 a barrel in the space of like a month, basically my job became redundant. They didn't want to pay me the wage they were paying me, and what they wanted me to pay me for, I was not prepared to throw away 7 months of my life. So I was without a job. And my ex-wife, my wife at the time, basically came home because she was still working. She had been laid off. And she basically gave me a kick in the ass and said, look, you hate that. You couldn't stand that life. Why are you still trying to find work back in something that you hate? Doesn't matter whether you're good at it or not. Why don't you do something you enjoy? You've got time, you've saved money, go do something else. And she kind of put in the idea that I like this kind of stuff. I've been reading this kind of stuff. Why don't I start it? And I've been working with people on the side and like helping some people out and people at work. And so I just took a leap. I jumped into my first training. And then I finished on the Sunday, and on Monday I took my first client. And back then I used to work for, what was it? Like $15 an hour, right? So those of you that have worked with me at the moment, it's a little bit more than that to work with me now. Just a touch. But the point is I had to start somewhere, right? And I've been lucky enough. I started in Phuket. Phuket's filled with, Phuket, Thailand. And it's filled with wellness centers. So I went and approached wellness centers. So look, I can give talks, I can give demonstrations. I subcontract you? And I started working there. And then about 2.5 years ago, I had a friend of mine, Thomas Engberts, really, really great physio, sorted my shoulder out in a couple of days, and which doctors couldn't do in years. I had an old rugby injury from school. And he took me to a marketing event. He goes, man, you got to go to this. No one knows about you. You don't know how to market yourself. You suck at marketing. So you need to go to this event. And I went to this event, and everyone said, like, what's your offer? What do you do? And so I said, oh, well, I help people quit smoking in an hour or less, $400, or they get the money back. And people are like, what? $400? And like, they quit smoking for life. Like, yeah, it's not 100% success rate. It's around 90%. But, $400 or they get the money back. And the guy who was running this seminar was Mitch Miller. And he basically said, like, are you insane? How can you be charging like so little for something that's like such a great thing? And I was like, well, man, like, whatever, like it's good money. I don't mind. It's an hour of my time, $400, it's fine. And since then, I've started working with a couple of professional athletes in Australia. I work with Shauna, I work with Lindsay, who's in the group. I actually work with your lovely wife, Colin, Nikki, amazing human being, by the way. I work with Brittany. I've had the pleasure to work with Mike Young. I've had the pleasure to work with a lot of really, really interesting people, some of who I have never met before I've even started working, but all of which I make an effort to go and meet at some point in time. But basically, what ended up happening was I realized along the way that while this started as a purely, and I'll be 100% honest, it started as a purely selfish thing. It was all for me. What I realized was the more I started learning how to communicate with people, the more I realized that people suck at communicating with themselves. And that's really where the whole element of self-sabotage comes in. So, first of all, I'm calling it self-sabotage because that's what everyone knows it as. But I don't believe it's self-sabotage. And I believe that anyone that calls it self-sabotage doesn't really understand the mind. And there's a lot of reasons why they don't understand. You see, first of all, I'm sure most of you have heard this. And if you have heard what I've said before, that's great. And if you haven't and you disagree with it, that's fine too. I'm not suggesting that this is everything you need to know. I'm not even saying that I am an expert. I'm not even suggesting that everything I say is going to help you. If you disagree with something I say, fine, disagree with it. What I will say is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There might be some things that I say that are controversial. There might be some things that I say that you disagree with. You might even just think I'm a prick. And that's okay, right? It's totally fine. All I'm going to say is the best way that I've got ahead is learning from people, even that I didn't like, but I knew that they had something that I might be able to learn from. And it gets back to this self-sabotage because the quality of the questions that you ask will determine where you focus your attention. And when you start asking your questions, and this is what I find with a lot of people with self-sabotage, what they'll do is they'll keep asking, so how about we do this? As an experiment, for everyone that's in this group, I don't know if you can do the raise hand things, Shauna, I think you might be able to. If any one of you have ever been in a situation where something just hasn't worked out, something like didn't go right, and you stopped and you probably asked yourself the question, why does this shit keep happening to me? Right? As a show of hands, now I don't even know if I can see this, but who's actually done that, right? I'll be willing to bet that probably almost everyone in this group has had that happen. And I'd be also willing to bet to then back it up with the next question. That, did you notice that all these amazing things started happening straight after? Or did you notice that a whole lot more shit just started to happen? I'd be willing to bet that most of you would have option 2. Because what you're doing is you're sending your attention to where you believe it needs to go. By asking that question, you're directing your attention, you're directing your mind to the place where you don't actually want to go. Because your mind operates in certain principles. One of those principles is attention. And the attention gets sent where closure is needed. And if you need to close something, if you need to shut something down, then it's going to keep looping until you find the answer. So if you ask yourself the question, why does this keep happening to me? You're going to find the answer. Your mind will go and find the answer for you. You'll say, oh, well, this is obviously important. Let's go search. So the quality of the questions you ask yourself will determine the life that you have. And here's the really cool thing about it. Why does this relate to self-sabotage? So a lot of people say that it depends on where you come from, right? There's some spiritual people who say that we choose our parents and like we make a sacred bond before we come to this world. If that's your belief, that's fine too. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. But there's also other people that turn around and say, you know, I chose this and I chose every aspect of my life. And then there's other people that say, well, I didn't choose my parents. Now, regardless of what your frame of belief is or your frame of reference, you're not born with a conscious mind. You develop it. And what does that mean? Well, That means from the time you're born till about the time you're age about 4, you are like a sponge. You absorb every single thing in your environment, meaning you absorb all the good and you absorb everything bad. Now, what will further accelerate that is emotional intensity. So if there are things that happen that are seriously significant in terms of an emotional charge, whether it's negative or positive, you will latch onto that because we learn very quickly with significant emotions. And if you don't believe me, ask anyone who's got a phobia how quickly it took them to learn the phobia. For example, a phobia of snakes. I'm sorry if everyone's got this, like apologize, but if they've got a phobia of snakes or spiders or something like that, something happened one time, scared the living hell out of that person, developed an automatic pattern. That's it. It's installed. They've got it. It's done. So emotion is one of the most powerful ways that we can learn. So when you have an intense emotion, then you get this intense response. Now, there's a process that I've been taught by one of my mentors. Well, I didn't get taught the whole process, but he taught me the theory behind it. And it's something that we'll get into in a moment, but it basically comes into conditioning, right? And that's what self-sabotage is. Self-sabotage is not you trying to destroy yourself. It's you doing something that you believe is of benefit to you. It's benefiting you somehow. Your unconscious believes it's benefiting you. So let's take the example, it's classic, like a smoker. A lot of the times, most people smoke for either attention, because they're not getting attention as a kid, or to fit in with their friends, because they want social acceptance, or otherwise because of trauma. And that becomes a go-to mechanism, which means if they got accepted as a child into the group of friends when they're smoking, they now associate smoking with acceptance. And even though that needs long and gone 10 years after they've started smoking, it doesn't matter. The unconscious has learned that smoking equals acceptance, they continue smoking. And that's why you can have these people with this willpower, they'll quit. Some of them will quit. Most won't. Because the unconscious pattern is still installed and they haven't done the thing to change that. And your unconscious, much like mine, and everybody on the planet, will continue to do the same thing. You see, we're all habits of attention. We're all creatures of habit. That's how human beings learn. We repeat, 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 install, next pattern. And your brain wants to learn everything as fast as it can, and then wants to turn it into an automatic program, i.e. habit. Now, the really cool thing about that, which is also the downfall of that, is that it will take shortcuts to do so. So when you think about it, there's a huge buzz at the moment called neuroplasticity. I'm pretty sure everyone on this call would have heard of it. I was like, oh, neuroplasticity, it's how I change everything. Everything's going to be great. It's going to be amazing, right? How do you think you learn all the bad shit? Neuroplasticity. It's how you learn everything. You learn everything through neuroplasticity because you start rewiring your brain. Your brain, from the moment you're born, starts trimming off. I'm not talking about the metaphor where the guy goes to the bar and starts drinking whiskey to cull the herd, so all the brain stems that remain behind are like the healthy ones, right? We're not talking about that. But your brain automatically starts trimming away neurons and connections from the moment you're born. Purely because what it starts to do is it starts to specify and it starts to specialize in what you want. And that's why you see these people who are experts and they become really good experts because their brain has been fine-tuned and the neural pathways have become laid in tracks. So when you're starting to change, when you're starting to make a shift inside of this, when you're starting to move into a different way, then what you're doing is you're basically, imagine taking that bulldozer before, and you've got an 8-lane superhighway to take you where you want to go. Now you've just got a bulldozer, and you're pushing a dirt path all the way to that same place. What's going to be easier for you to do? What's going to be the easiest for you? It's going to be easier to go up the highway. Right? It's always going to be easier up the highway because that's going to be the path that's being run. Now, what you do is when you go through this, is that it's important to understand that there's the hemispheric dominant functions. So basically in one hemisphere, it's designed for one thing, and the other hemisphere is designed for something else. So basically, when you start looking at things, does anyone know what the term embodied cognition means? It's okay if you don't, I'll explain it anyway. But basically, embodied cognition is a study that they learned that we kind of learn things through sensory input. So when we're babies, our mothers hold us. Well, if we've got mothers that love us and like look after us and that kind of thing, they hold us close, right? So we get associated that being close and warm is a good thing. And that's why people who associate that as being warm, that's embodied cognition, learn through the body, right? You've cognitively learned something through the body. And that's something that's far away and further away gets cold. Now, you can start to simulate this kind of thing. And this is like an old sales trick. It's not really what this call's about, but for an example to illustrate it. If you give someone like a mug of tea or a mug of coffee, and then you sit them in front of a computer and get them to rate the kindness of the person on the screen that they don't know, they will rate the people on the screen as being more warmer and kinder and being a lot closer. And if you give that same person a cup of cold water and go through the exact same photos, they will then start to presume that everyone is colder and more distant, because that's what we've learned through growing up. Again, it's how you're conditioned, which is the same aspect as this whole self-sabotage deal. So the idea is, if you want to figure out what's going on, if you want to start to understand how this self-sabotage is happening, you want to understand what it is. And what it is discovering an intention behind the act. Now, most people say that, well, not most, but a lot of people that I work with, when I first start, say that their mind is like their worst enemy. And you can treat it like that. Of course you can. I like to think of my mind as my best friend. Because without it, I wouldn't be here anyway. Well, not consciously, I'd be off in fairyland somewhere. But the point being, if your mind is your best friend and you understand that, I mean, you really understand that, then you know that no matter what it is doing for a positive benefit for you. Now, 10 years later, going and smoking might not be the thing, or drinking might not be the thing, or dating some jerk or some bitch, whatever, I don't care, right? Might not be the right way to do it, but when you were a teenager, that was your way to escape your house. That was a way to escape school. That was a way to escape something. So it served a purpose. And then, because you carried on doing it time and time and time again, locked in, became a pattern, your unconscious took it, ran with it, and now it becomes a habit. Self-sabotage, in and of itself, is not you trying to attack yourself. It's you trying to achieve an outcome. It's you trying to achieve and satisfy some criteria that you have at a deeper level. So, can you figure it out on your own? Absolutely. The question you ask yourself is really, really simple. Super simple. What's the positive intention behind my action? I'll say that again. What is the positive intention behind my action? You see, if you come at this process from the belief that I have, and I really do have this belief, when someone sits in a chair, whether it's on the other side of the world or whether it's next to me and we're working together in person, when you hire me and we're working together, I am 100% of the mind that there is nothing wrong with you. And I mean that absolutely. Now, sure, okay, there's sociopaths and psychopaths and that kind of thing, right? But most of those people don't work with me anyway. They're usually in jail. So that's not a problem. But when someone comes to me and says, I've got this block, I'm like, sure, I believe you. I believe they have a block. I also believe that they can find their way out of it pretty quickly. And that's why usually what happens. Because I honestly believe that people limit themselves through a pattern that they think is actually trying to destroy them. But when you start to understand some of the principles of how your mind works, and to be honest, in 5 years, everything I'm saying right now could be wrong. But right now, it seems to be working with people, and it seems to be getting results for around about 96% of the people I work with. So that's why I'm going off this. And to be honest, some of the latest neuroscience seems to be backing a lot of this stuff up too, through a lot of the stuff with neuroplasticity. So what does the positive intention have to do with anything? Well, let's look at it this way. Let's say that you're looking at something, right? You're paying attention to something. And you're afraid. You're what's the word? Procrastinator. There you go. You're a procrastinator. You don't start things. You don't follow through. Right. Do you do that with everything or just something? And if you find you just do it in a particular area and you don't hesitate with other things, then you're not a procrastinator and you do follow through. But in that particular area of your life, perhaps there's something that you need to learn. You see, your mind is incredibly smart. Think of it like a 2-year-old Einstein. Has crazy tantrums, especially your unconscious. Now, your unconscious is an emotional-based brain. So if it detects that there's something that's going to cause hurt for you, it's going to stop you dead in your tracks. There is nothing you can do to stop it unless you re-educate your mind and you start to connect with the change. Now, how do you do that? Well, like I said a moment ago, the first thing is to discover what the positive intention is behind the behavior you're doing. Now, this is super important in the context that you're doing it. If you turn around and you ask why someone shot someone else, and it's in the streets of New York, it's going to be one thing. If it's in the streets of Iraq or Afghanistan, it's going to be a very different context. Very different rules are applying. And the context is always important. Always. Because maybe you don't get up to go to the gym. And so you tell yourself, I'm a procrastinator. And then you don't get up to make a sales call. So you say you're a procrastinator. They're not related. They're two very different things. They're two very different ideas. They're two very different outcomes. Now, what's driving both of those behaviors, it might be the same thing. Could be, but not always. So it's always context specific. And so let's take the example of the person who's going to the gym, or not going to the gym per se. And this person's not going to the gym, and they're even getting dressed in the gym clothes, and they're getting ready to go out the door, and they're moving forward, and everything's good to go. But then they distract themselves with Facebook, and then they distract themselves with a phone call. And then they distract themselves with doing the laundry. And then before they know it, the person's been sitting around the house for like 3.5 hours and no longer have time to go to the gym. And they get frustrated themselves. So you ask them what the intention is. And the person turns around and says, well, you know what? I don't like being looked at when I go to the gym because there are people who are much fitter than me and much healthier than me. Okay, fair enough. But what's the positive intention for that? What's that going to do for you? And a good few times, it usually will come back to something along the lines of protection. I don't look like an idiot. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want people to judge me. And if you notice what I said there, it's always focused on the negative. It's always what they don't want, never what they do want. Because it's based out of fear. So, once they've got that, then it's just a matter of establishing, well, if that were the case, and that was actually doing its job, I mean, it was doing its job properly, then would you actually, if you were safe, right, if you were protected, would you actually even have that fear in the first place? Most likely not. It's pretty hard to have fear when you know you're protected, right? I mean, if you're absolutely safe, I mean, without a doubt, you're completely safe. What do you got to be afraid of? Or maybe dying, but like that's a whole different story, right? Everyone's going to die. And if you're afraid of dying, just start to know that no one has ever beaten death. And if you do, you're going to be making a lot more money. You don't need to be on this call with me. I promise you that much. So if you can beat death, you've got everything sorted for you. I'll wish you farewell, and you can teach me anytime. I'll be a very, very happy learner. But on the flip side, death is also what gives life meaning. Because if you were here forever, it'd be pretty bloody boring. But enough on that, that's for another time. Back to self-sabotage. So when you start thinking about this self-sabotage, and you start moving through the world, and you've got a certain area, maybe you've got a certain focus where you see yourself sabotaging all the time. And you can't figure out how to stop it. The fastest, most easiest way that you can start to analyze yourself without anyone else's help is to find out what are you gaining from it. And the standard answer I hear all the time is, I'm not gaining anything. Yeah? Why are you doing it? You do anything that you do not get a benefit from. Now, when I work with people pro bono, which I do from time to time, they're like, well, what benefit do you get from that? Like, make me feel good. Doesn't benefit. I didn't get in this to be a millionaire. When it happens, great. But I got in this to help people. I went from killing people to drilling holes in the ground to helping people. It's a pretty big shift. But I'm a lot happier now. But the point being, there is always some benefit. People will do what they do. You can always trust people to do what's right by themselves, which means you can always trust you to do what's right by yourself. There's no other way possible. It just can't happen. So, seeing as it's an emotion, you need to get clear on what you do want. What is it you're trying to achieve? Because most people, when they're sabotaging, they're usually not very clear on what they want. They have no clue. And they can't decide. And if you can't decide, how do you even know you're sabotaging yourself in the first place? Like, what way is forward? Think about it. If you're not clear on the direction you want to head, then what is self-sabotage? And if you're going to talk about procrastination, there's typically 3 reasons why people procrastinate. The first reason is because they don't know what to do. The second reason is they don't know how to do it. And the third reason is their heart's not in it. Someone else has said, hey, you should do this, it's a great idea. But you don't want to do it. So if you find you're in the third category, choose something different. You'll find you stop procrastinating. And that's the reason why I'm harping on that, I'm going over that, is because it seems to be one of the biggest things that I find with entrepreneurs. Oh, I'm procrastinating. Oh, I'm wasting time on doing this. Do you really want to do that? Is it something you enjoy doing? No. Can you outsource it? Yes, outsource it. Can you not outsource it? No. Does it lead you to where you want to go? Is it a step in the path to what you want to achieve? 9 times out of 10 will say, I don't know. Right. That's why you're procrastinating. Because if it's on your path and you're moving forward and it's leading you to where you want to go, then you want to do it. Because if it's going to be step 1, step 2, step 3, then you can't get to step 3 without hitting step 2. So you want to do that because you want that in the end. Now, if your drive for that isn't big enough, you will procrastinate. If someone has told you that you wanted that and you don't want that, you will procrastinate. But steering off to the side, not doing things, wasting time, are all conditioning effects. I'm not going to harp on about technology. I'm not going to talk about it because you guys have probably read a million things on social media and how Facebook came in with the likes and it got the dopamine rush. You were conditioned. Now, from a marketing standpoint, and I'm not much of a marketer, so we're clear, there are people paying billions of dollars to condition your mind. Like billions. Advertisements, products, placements, all this crap. I'm not spending billions of dollars, so we're clear, but this right now, talking to you right now, is a frame of reference that I've found exceptionally useful. You might think it's all complete baloney, complete waste of time, and that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. At the same time, what is useful for you? Because people are fighting for your mind and your attention. And people that are in an anxious state, in a fearful state, are much better buyers and much better for the economy than people who are happy, relaxed, and calm. So, do you want to take control and condition your mind? Or do you want to have someone else condition it for you? Because you do have a choice. But if you're not doing anything for yourself, then you're letting everyone else condition it for you. Now, people kind of laugh or they scoff at me when I say this, but I spend around 2.5 hours each day just going through programs to program my mind. There's a couple of reasons. First reason is when I'm showing up on a call for someone, I need to be there 100%. I just went through some deeply personal shit that doesn't need to be said over social media at the moment. My girlfriend went through some pretty heavy stuff. I can't take that with me into a call with a client. So I make sure I spend about an hour and a half in the morning and an hour before I go to bed so that I get a full night's sleep that's recharged, refreshed, and ready to go. Every single day. I condition my mind for what I want. Because I know that if I don't, someone else will. I think it's a pretty cool saying. I'm going to mess it up, so I apologize to whoever actually made this quote. But they basically turned around and said, if you don't work towards your dreams, you end up working for someone else or working towards someone else's. And I take that and I turn around and say, if you don't condition your mind, you'll end up being conditioned for someone else's dream. So to put it really, really simply, you're your own best friend. And you've learned things from people who had the best intentions for you and yet still might have given you some really shitty patterns. Not their fault. They learn from people who are doing their best. And they learn from people who are doing their best. My dad, who I love dearly, was beaten by his father, got given a loaded shotgun when he was 5 and told to blow his fucking brains out, was kicked out of the house, like all kinds of nasty stuff. My dad's nothing like his father. He did the best he could. Now, I'm not going to be anything like my father because I'm not having children, so we're clear. But the point being, people only do the best with what they can. You're not fucked up. There's nothing wrong with you. You're completely okay. You might just have some programs that don't work anymore. But I guarantee you they worked for you at some point. You're not destroying your life. You're not destroying yourself. But you can be better. You can definitely improve. And you can change. Now, maybe you've had some nasty shit happen to you. I'm not saying that you haven't. But it's how you interpret it. It's how you let it go. Be like, oh, yeah, what do you know? Well, I've worked with women who've been raped and molested. This upsets a lot of people. I've worked with a couple of pedophiles because they came to me and they told me they wanted to change. What kind of piece of shit would I be to turn around and say, no, I'm not going to help you when someone wants to change? They knew it's wrong. They tried to change. I'm going to help. It's not my job to judge. My job to help. So I'll tell you again, there's nothing wrong with you. But if you find yourself sabotaging, then maybe you've got a program that worked for you at one point in time. And your mind still thinks that you need to run that program so you can get a result. And maybe you don't even want that result anymore. But I promise you, it thinks it's doing something positive for you. Otherwise, your mind would have stopped it. Are there any questions?
Fucking unreal, man. Unreal, brother.
Did you just drop the mic?
Hey, no.
I think there was a mic drop there. That was awesome. Are there any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome, dude.
Thanks a lot. I
Why
appreciate
can't I
it.
see you, man? I can't see you. I can hear you, but I can't see
You
you.
can't see me?
No,
My camera's back on.
what if I do? Ah, there we go. I got it now. All right.
You're talking to someone you can't see.
I was talking to myself the whole time, man. I'm like, I don't want to put my own face. All right. I had the wrong view up.
Well, I really, really appreciate you coming on. If you guys do have some questions, why don't you pop them in? Because we got them. Got them here. How does this, can you see the question? Someone said, how does this relate to fight or flight?
Okay. So fight or flight is a little bit different. Fight or flight is basically your neurology reacting to like a stimulus response. Now, we're kind of going to go off on a tangent. Do we have time, Shauna?
Yeah, you go
Okay.
ahead.
This is going to be a little bit of a tangent. So your neurology, much like mine, has evolved over like, I'm sorry if anyone's religious. I promise you I don't mean any offense. Like, I just go off science. That's all. Okay? There's no offense to any religion whatsoever. So when you take, let's say we're all going back like 20,000 years and we're living in the caves, if you can believe that, right? We're in the caves, we're in a big tribe. The guys are hunting mastodons and saber-toothed tigers, and the ladies are collecting berries and like harvesting and making sure everything's good. The neurology was designed to deal with acute stress, meaning, holy shit, there's a saber-toothed tiger, let's get the hell out of here, we're going to die. Or you're walking along and there's this squiggly thing on the ground, and the squiggly thing bites. I'm sorry, Shauna, you've been sacrificed. The squiggly thing bites Shauna, and then 30 minutes later, we see Shauna's dead on the heap on the ground. So now we need to know that, okay, we need to tell everyone else that that squiggly thing probably killed Shauna, right? That's acute stress. We need to know that. When it comes to fight or flight, what's happening over time is there's becoming a massive buildup of chronic stress, right? Chronic stress is in, I'm getting an email as soon as I wake up and my phone's gone off. So I highly recommend that you don't actually turn like emails on first thing in the morning. Like, I seriously recommend you check them after 10. That's another story for another day. But what you want to do is you basically want to start limiting the amount of deluge that's coming in. And what I'm talking about with like a deluge coming in, you might get a certain look from someone, and it could be your partner who you love dearly. But you know, right? You know that that look means something. You don't know shit, to be honest. You're making an assumption. Now, you could be right, you could be wrong. But you could have actually just started a whole argument. So how self-sabotage ties in with this is when you start getting activated into a fight or flight state. A lot of people will turn around and say, oh, I rose to the occasion. No, no one rises to the occasion. The only time people rise to the occasion is when it's like a physical feat, like a woman lifting a car off a baby. Or I read this crazy story of this Russian ski plane that crashed in the North Arctic. And there were two guys there, a pilot and his passenger. And the passenger was inside. And the pilot was standing on the side of the plane. And he got this tap on the shoulder. And he like brushed it off and hit it away. He got this tap on the shoulder again. He looked inside and he saw the pilot, like his partner inside. He turned around, the polar bear behind him. The dude like launched off his feet and jumped onto the roof of the plane, which was something like, they said something stupid, like 9 foot, like higher than any world high jump has ever got. So your neurology responds exceptionally well to like a physical threat and will get everything going so you can do amazing feats. But in terms of stress, it comes back to what we were talking about before, which is conditioning. So I was in the military, right? And in the Navy. And in the Navy, the thing that's the most deadly thing in the world is fire. You get fire on a ship or a submarine, it's all over. So we would drill every single day about putting out fires. We drill about once every week or once every 2 weeks for like fixing up leaks and clogging up leaks so we wouldn't sink. But why do we drill? Why does the military drill? Why do doctors rehearse? Why do police officers drill? Why do pilots? even in the middle of the day when everything's perfect, flick on the landing light. Why? Because they've conditioned themselves so much, so intensely that no matter what happens, they can just, in the worst, like 40 knot crosswinds, the plane's going crazy, they're just going in the procedure and they flick, ding, 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 and they come down and land. So what does this have to do with fight or flight? When you are in an automatic pattern, you will revert back to that when you're under fear, when you're under pressure, when you're under stress. The only way to change that is to change your patterning and condition yourself in a new way. Now, CBT, if anyone's heard of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, works. It just takes 6 to 12 months, which for me is like way too long. So like, it's useful. Like, it's really, really useful. It just takes too long. I prefer doing other ways. And other ways, meaning you start hijacking emotions to break boundary conditions inside your neurology. To do that, it's kind of like, it's a bit more complicated than what I can get to explain in here. It's basically linking emotions to an old trigger and then collapsing the trigger. It's the fastest way I can explain it. How you do that by yourself, I'm still working on it, and when I know, I'll teach you, but I don't actually know. But that's how self-sabotage relates to fight or flight. It relates because if your programming is still in the position that it's going to move you into the old pattern, when you have that stress, that chronic stress trigger, you'll go straight back to that pattern. That's how it relates. Does that answer your question? I think it might. I don't know.
That was really good. A few people, she said yes.
Okay.
There's quite a few people that are asking about how do you condition your mind and stuff, and maybe tell them about your GZU program. He actually has a really cool, super affordable program that you can literally listen to every morning and every night. Do you want to just tell them about that, Clay?
Can do, dude. It wasn't going to be like a pitch test, man. Like, you asked me to speak about self-sabotage.
I didn't there was obviously never going to be a pitch, but at the same time, like, valuable information that can help people, and yeah, pitch your thing, like, share with everybody what you have, because it is really amazing.
All right, hold on a sec. I've got to go find this now. Yeah, I've got to find that. So basically, to answer the question of how I condition my mind for 2.5 hours a day, it's pretty simple. So I learned in the military that you fall to your lowest level of training, right? And
he's gone.
okay, let's come back.
Oh wait, where are you? There, you're back.
I don't even know. When did that cut out, dude? I don't even know what I was saying.
You said and then you cut off.
Okay. So yeah, like the hotel Wi-Fi is like shit. So I apologize. So basically, I had this learning when I was in the military that you fall to your lowest level conditioning. And so when I started realizing that I could actually condition my mind, I wanted to start to create systems that were going to allow me to actually do that, because I kind of didn't want to have to pay someone a couple of $100 a session every time I wanted to condition my mind, right? It kind of gets a bit pricey if that's your only way of doing it. And I also, when I started working with my clients, wanted to give them more value than to just have them like rock up for a session and then nothing to do in between sessions. So I'm like, well, how can I actually start to create more value for my clients? And what Shauna was asking me about is something that I created for my personal clients. And then in January this year, like, I had a lot of people reach out and like, hey man, like, we can't afford to work with you. Like, what can you do? And so I'd kind of been dicking around for a bit. And then I went ahead and basically released what I'm going to show you now to the public in a post a little while ago, which basically gives you access to all the courses and all the training. It's a subscription service. So meaning like it is pay to play. Like it's, in my personal opinion, it's crazy cheap. It's like $43 a month, or it's $400 for a year. And I'm about to release another course now, which is coming out shortly, which is basically going to be like an introduction to NLP, hypnosis, persuasion, and psychology. And it's just going to be like a training program. And the idea being that what I'd like to do is just have this for people who want to dabble, who are interested in it, I guess, and who want to test something out. So what I'll do, can I share my screen? I don't know if I can. I hope this isn't going to crash, so I apologize if this crashes too. All right, there you go. So this is like the gray zone. As you can see, there's still some stuff that's being built at the moment. When you're a member, you get access to everything. And basically what happens is, like, there's a lot of stuff, right? So these are going to be like all intro courses. This is actually getting redone at the moment. This is a system developed, as you can see. Self-sabotage to automatic success. How inconvenient. But that's why I created the course, right? Because I kept on finding people were getting all this self-sabotage. So what this does is it starts to release a lot of the emotions that start causing self-sabotage, starts to release a lot of the negative energy, and starts to create systems inside your brain, and conscious systems as well as unconscious systems. So, for example, if we just go in there, hopefully it loads. Like this Wi-Fi is really horrible. I'm really stoked it held up for as long as it has. Okay, so this is on the inside, and basically you would, once you're inside, you go to here. You got the 8 sections there, and when it works, there you go. And basically it's just a module by module. Each module is structured for a week. You go in there, there's conscious learning stuff, so there's stuff like what we just spoke about. There's workbooks to work through. There's videos that will teach you how to go through things. There's a Facebook membership group in which if you've got any questions, you can just ask in the group. I'll answer it. There's other specialists that are coming online who'll answer it. So there's like intros to everything. Here's the workbook for this section. Then there's audio tracks. So if you didn't get entirely bored by listening to me then, you can get bored to me listening to me here on recording. And then down here, you have what I call nap sessions, which I call neuro-autonomic programming. Now, the lovely lady who spoke about fight or flight, you are talking about your autonomic nervous system, whether you know it or not. You probably do. And your autonomic nervous system is one of the oldest systems, and it's either on or off. It's binary. This is what is the leading cause for inflammation, for stress. Now, these systems are designed to allow you to start to adjust your heart rate variability. Now, if you don't know what that means, that basically means your ability to let go of stress and your ability to relax and let go. So nap sessions are basically a combination of hypnotic language, NLP, brainwave entrainment, subliminal messaging, and a lot of other stuff. And it's basically an automatic system that just keeps playing over and over and over and over again. And you've got access to that as long as you want. I recommend people do each section for a week, move on to the next section, and then do all the work. And the people that do the work notice pretty profound changes. The people that listen to the nap sessions get pretty profound changes. I'll be honest. It is not as powerful as working with me because I can't be there with you, watching you and monitoring you as you're going through things. However, that's why you have access to it 24/7, so you can just keep listening to it over and over and over again. And then this is where the purpose comes in, conditioning. You start opening up the brainwaves start coming in, and they start getting and hearing the repeated fashion. The brainwave entrainment plus all the hypnotic language is designed to take you down to a brainwave state that is similar to what you were between the ages of 0 to 4 in your imprint state. So it's designed to get you into a state where you are not filtering things, where things are going straight in, and it's just saturating your mind with a lot of positive content, a lot of positive emotions, and there's going to be some more. So this is like version 1 for most things at the moment, and there's going to be version 2 coming out pretty soon, like Mind Flow Mastery. It's going to be version 2 as soon as it comes out. So that's part of what I do to condition my brain. There's a program in there which is called the Zen Mind, which is about to go through a massive revamp. That's the other part that I do to condition my brain. I do a breathwork technique. It's like a four-fold technique I combine into one, so I do body-based meditation. I don't try and tame my brain. I use my body to tame my brain and my mind and shut it down. And it works a lot faster. I teach it to athletes. I teach it to people who are insomniacs and they're sleeping within a week. I'm dialing into the system I'm trying to get it proven with like 100 people. It's not there yet. That when you do the conditioning process, within 4 weeks, you'll be able to fall asleep in 60 seconds or less. I haven't quite got to 100 people yet, but when I get to 100 people, then I'll start rolling it out. So that's what I mean by conditioning. Conditioning is setting up routines and habits and cognitive functions that continue to keep you moving forward in the way that you want and consciously in the way that you want, and starts to align things. And through the breath work and the combination of all the nap sessions and everything else, you let go of a lot of trauma stuff you didn't even know you had. And when I use the word trauma, I use it very loosely and very differently to a lot of people. A billionaire's son who has gotten everything he ever wanted and then doesn't, I know what most people say, spoiled brat, but then asks for like a black iPad for Christmas and then gets a white one and then cracks his shits. He's cracking the shits because he's been conditioned to get everything he wants all the time. Not because he's a spoiled brat, it's because that's how he's been conditioned to be. And if he's been conditioned to continue to respond in that way, he's going to respond in that way. Now, I'm not saying I'm an advocate for, giving your kids everything you want. I don't have kids. I've got no say on it whatsoever. What I am saying is you will get what you condition for. Ladies, if you're going up and you're meeting men and you're putting off a vibe where you're not confident, they'll pick it up. Guys, same thing. I had a really good friend of mine, and she always kept on saying to me, Clay, I don't understand why I always stay fat and I look so ugly. And I can't get a boyfriend. I'm like, well, if you think you're fat and ugly, don't you think you're putting that vibe out to everyone else? You will project what you see inside yourself. So the whole thing that I've orchestrated is designed around allowing you to cut through the BS that you've told yourself is true, because it's not. I found that out the hard way, and most of these systems I also built for myself, to be perfectly honest. And then when I worked on me, I tested some other people, and then I worked on other people. I'm like, okay, it's good to go. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yes. Okay, guys, we're running out of time here. So if you do have the last one person asked Clay about what is one of your top books you recommend to your clients? That would probably be based on what they're looking for. I think everybody's kind of different, but I don't know if you have one that you think can kind of generally help everybody.
Yeah, there's one I'll give to everyone. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He's an Austrian neuropsychologist. Neuropsychologist. And dude was a Jew, Austrian Jew, taken into the prison camps and survived. And basically he came to the conclusion that between every stimulus and response, there's a gap. And inside that gap, there's a choice. And if someone can go through those conditions and that hell and still realize that he always has a choice, then you can realize that you always have a choice too. But that book, when I read it, I was like, holy shit. If someone can go through that kind of hell and have that kind of control and that kind of understanding, then there's something we can all learn.
What's it called again, Clay?
Hold on a second, I'll type it in here.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. Do you work with kids, Clay?
I do, but it's I might miss a white one. I'm pretty sure that's it. I do, but it depends. So a lot of my clients have asked me. So I've worked with Mike's daughter. I've worked with a couple of other people's daughters and sons as well. It just depends on what it's about, what it's regarding. with the guys, I think Tamara has actually asked if my program will work with kids. So Tamara, as you might have guessed, I'm pretty crude. So while the programs work with kids, I swear a fair bit and might not be appropriate. So yes, it will definitely work with kids. And if you can, I'm pretty sure I like cut out most of the swearing, to be honest. Like I went through and edited it. Being ex-sailor and ex-oil rig, I try not to swear, but it kind of just got ingrained in me pretty heavily. I've like tried to condition it out and keep doing so. So I swear a lot less now. However, yeah, to be honest, if you can get your kids into this kind of stuff, I've got a client of mine and her son saw what I was doing with her. And she's an exec for MasterCard. And he's like, Mom, I want to work with him. And she's like, okay. And so we do our sessions together, and he's doing great. So yeah, like it just depends on whether your kids are open to it and whether they want to. Because I won't work with children if it's like at the parents' suggestion. And if I do, then I'll work with the kids on what they want to work on, not what the parent does. Because 9 times out of 10, you need to go in that way to get the trust of the child, so you can actually help them with what the real issue is.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time, Clay. Really appreciate it. Give us an hour of your time.
Thanks for having me, dude. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Super, super fucking grateful for you. So thank you. And if you guys do want to get in touch with Clay, he's on Facebook, Instagram, but more likely on Facebook, Clay Moffat, Moffatt.
Just cut out again.
Did I spell it wrong?
No, but I think my internet just disconnected.
Your Instagram?
No, my internet, dude. It's all good.
No, you're here. Your Instagram, internet. You know all the things. Well, thanks again so much. And really,
you're welcome, man. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with me, I'm happy to do so. Like connect on Facebook. You can connect on Instagram, but as Shauna knows, like I'm fucking useless at that. Like I didn't post on there for like 3 years, so I'm not really on there. I am, like I'm not, but you can connect on there with me as well. But yeah, if you want to connect on Facebook, hit me up, no problem. If you want to jump into the GSU, you can do that too. Like it's no bother. There's a lot of changes that's going to be going on. The price will go up. I'm not going to say when. It might go up in 6 months. Like I promise you, there's no rush, right? If you want to get in, you want to start changing, go for it. But until I've got like all the back end sorted and all the things I want, I'm not going to put the price up. So you got time, like no rush. But if you've got something you want to work through and you think that might help, go for it. If you want to connect with me on Facebook, go for it. I'm posting stuff every day. Some you might find useful, some you might find offensive, just whatever.
Oh, yes. And that is why I love you.
Love you too, dude.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. And everybody take care. Have a beauty night and find Clay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.